Found Duckling by EvaDragon on AO3. Rating: Teen and Up audiences. Archive warnings. Creator chose not to use archive warnings and graphic depictions of violence. Category: Gen. Fandoms: Danny Phantom, Batman all media types. Justice League all media types. DCU. Relationships: Danny Fenton and Jason Todd, Tim Drake and Danny Fenton, Danny Fenton and Bruce Wayne, Danny Fenton and Damian Wayne, Danny Fenton and Dick Grayson, Danny Fenton and Dan Phantom, Danny Phantom and Danielle Danny Phantom. Characters: Danny Fenton, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Bruce Wayne, Damian Wayne, Danielle Danny Phantom, Jazz Fenton, Sam Manson, Tucker Foley, Alfred Pennyworth, Frostbite, Stephanie Brown, John Constantine, Dan Phantom, Cassandra Cain, Barbara Gordon. Justice League. Additional tags: Danny Fenton is a little shit. Bat Family Shenanigans. Bad Parents Jack and Maddie Fenton. Death Day Anniversaries for Ghosts. Eldritch Danny Fenton. Ghost King Danny Fenton. Protective Tim Drake. Protective Jason Todd. Protective Dick Grayson. Protective Damian Wayne. Not Phantom Planet compliant. Dan Phantom Redemption. The Dannys are triplets. Tim Drake and Danny Fenton are siblings. Cracked Ghost Cores. DC stands for Discarded Canon. Canon Typical Violence. Bruce Wayne tries to be a good parent. No beta, we die like Danny and Jason. PODFIC welcome. Language: English. Make sure to check out the original author, EvaDragon, on AO3. Link in description. Summary: Tim didn't know he had a little brother. Danny didn't know that Scarecrow's fear gas would act as a truth serum. Danny gets kidnapped right after the Scarecrow attack. His attackers assume he's Tim and call for his ransom. Red Robin rescues Danny. Shenanigans ensue. Found Duckling by EvaDragon. Chapter 1. The Kidnapping. It had started off as any other normal Thursday. Well, normal for a half-dead, post-vivisected runaway teenager anyways. But for Danny, it was normal. His Y scar had finally healed enough for him to get a job as a barista at the coffee shop not too far from his apartment that Sam had set up for him. He was attending online night school as Daniel James Nightingale. With no ghost attacks, he had managed to pull his grades up. He'd even accelerated and was now in line to graduate early. He had been accepted to Gotham University with a full-ride scholarship and was going to be majoring in both mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering. They, Jazz, Sam, and Tucker, decided to keep to the truth as much as possible since Danny was a horrible liar. So his official story was that he moved to Gotham because he came out as gay and it had gone badly. Close enough to the truth. This way, he would be able to look for his biological family. Too bad one quick Google search later showed that both Jack and Janet Drake were dead and had been dead for a few years. Danny didn't know if he was going to look for any other family members or not. And hadn't that been an absolute bomb to deal with? His pair, Jack and Maddie, had been on another one of their benders and had left Jazz and Danny alone again. They'd already been gone for a week or so when Danny had been in one of his curious, snooping moods. He found a box buried in the back of their closet, marked with his name on it. He pulled it out. There were dozens of pictures of Jack and Maddie with another couple, Jack and Janet Drake. If the names on the pictures were to be believed, Janet was heavily pregnant in several of the later pictures. Then there were pictures of Janet in the hospital where she was giving birth, and the first pictures of a little black-haired, blue-eyed baby with a name, Daniel James. Danny stared at the picture. Intrinsically, he knew he was looking at his baby picture, and then he found the paperwork. He was born to Janet and Jackson Drake while they were on a 2-year archaeological contract dig. Janet hadn't wanted a pregnancy, so instead they had met the Fentons, who were wandering around Egypt on a ghost hunt. Janet had kept everything under the radar and basically used the pregnancy as a surrogacy for Maddie, who was unable to have another child due to the ectoplasm radiation poisoning. Once Daniel was born, both Drake parents signed over all parental rights within moments of the baby being born. Jazz had found Danny having an existential crisis only to have to comfort and reassure him that he was still her baby brother no matter what. Anyways, back to Danny's totally normal Thursday, at least until Scarecrow decided to be a bitch and release his newest fear gas on half of Gotham. The half of Gotham that included both Danny's job and apartment. Because again, Scarecrow was an angsty bitch. The coffee shop, aptly named Blacker Than My Soul, this had caused Danny to snort when he first came across the shop, had promptly shut down for the day and sent all the employees and customers out before locking the doors. Danny's eyes grew wide as the cloud of noxious purple and red fear gas enveloped him before he could blink. He inhaled several times before he remembered that he technically didn't need to breathe. Damn it, things had been going so well too, he thought as he trudged his way back to his shitty rat hole of an apartment. It was the best that him and his friends could do under the circumstances. Sam could only siphon off so much money from her parents before they noticed. So he had gotten a job. His little studio apartment in Crime Alley was all he could afford on his salary. He saw several of the Bat Furry Brigade flying through the air on their grapple lines, and for a brief moment thought about joining them, but then thought better of it. The anti-ecto control acts were still in place, and Danny wasn't sure if the flying furries were in league with the GIW or not. He wasn't going to chance it, though. And that was the last thought that ran through his head before he felt something hit him, hard, on the back of his head. It was hard enough for him to see stars, a hand wrapped around his face. He briefly wondered why the cloth smelled funny. But he wasn't really processing anything since his head hurt so damn much. And because his head hurt, that also meant that he forgot that he didn't have to breathe. It only took a few moments for him to go out, and then he was shoved into a stereotypical white van that screamed kidnapper van. When he came to, he realized that his hands were tied to a chair with both duct tape and heavy-duty rope. Phasing the tape off was going to be a bitch, because they had taped it to his bare arms, and even in his ghost form, duct tape never came off clean. His legs were similarly restrained, as was his torso. He couldn't fathom why he'd been kidnapped. He was just plain Danny Nightingale. No one knew that he might be connected to the now dead Drake family, and these guys definitely weren't GIW. "Oh good, the brat's awake," he heard a rough voice say, A not-so-gentle hand slapped him a couple of times just for good measure. Danny threw the guy a glare. The thug just laughed, apparently amused. Danny called him Cornelius in his head. Cornelius was a big burly guy who definitely could use a good dental plan. 4 others came into view. All of them were in the same vein as Cornelius, except one. Danny called that guy Vlad 2.0. Vlad 2.0 was definitely the leader and gave off stranger danger vibes. The other guys, including Cornelius, just gave off regular Gotham thug vibes. "Don't mess with the merchandise, Johnny," said Vlad 2.0. "I'm making the call to the Waynes now. I'm sure they want proof of their missing kid." "Wayne what?" Danny thought sluggishly, and then let out a giggle. "I see stars," he said out loud. "How hard did you hit him, Bobby?" "No harder than usual," replied the thug now named Bobby. "Shut up, the both of you, and put a gag on the brat," Vlad 2.0 snarled. "Wayne residence," Alfred the butler answered. "Well, Mr. Butler, you seem to have misplaced a little duckling," came the voice on the other end. Alfred looked up to make sure that he'd heard correctly, but no, Master Timothy was indeed sitting at the table nursing another cup of coffee. Most of his wards had returned after the Scarecrow debacle and were debriefing at the dinner table. "So this is a ransom call, I take it?" That got everyone's attention. "That's right. Appears we've got ourselves a lost Drake brat," the surly voice replied, a muffled, "Will you shove a gag on him?" And then some giggling came across the line. "We want 10 million in cash for the brat. 4th warehouse district by the docks. You have 1 hour. Any more than that, and I can't guarantee the brat'll be in one piece." The line went dead. "Alfred?" Bruce questioned. "It appears that someone has mistaken a random civilian for Master Timothy," Alfred replied calmly. "Me specifically?" Tim asked. "Yes, Master Tim. They said I quote, a lost Drake brat. Tim, you and Dick head to the cave to suit up. The rest of you stay here in case we need backup. Jason is still out. See if we can get in touch with him to get en route to the warehouse to scout it out," Bruce said as he was moving into action. The rest of the bats and birds sprang into action. Tim, Dick, and Bruce made their way to the cave and were back in their suits in quick time. Oracle pulled the warehouse up on the cameras that she was able to hack. It was a fairly standard Gotham warehouse at the docks. There were no goons or thugs outside of the warehouse that could be seen. Jason had agreed to go out as Red Hood to scout out, but he hadn't reached the warehouse yet. The 3 of them raced out of the cave on their motorcycles. They were halfway there when they received confirmation that Hood had reached the warehouse to scope it out. Red Robin, Nightwing, and Batman parked their own bikes a few blocks away and then grappled up to the rooftops and practically flew the rest of the way to the warehouse indicated. "Hood, report," Batman snapped out.
5 thugs inside, armed with simple pistols. The hostage is tied to a chair. He appears to be a meta of some kind,"
Hood reported. Batman and the other 2 sucked in their breaths. "What makes you say that, Little Wing?" Nightwing asked.
"They've put 3 gags on him since I've been here, and he keeps phasing out of them. He also appears to be, for lack of better word, high, as I've heard non-stop giggling from him."
There was a burst of, "Make him shut up," and "That's the 10th gag we've placed on him," and "We're fucking trying," coming from inside the warehouse. "That's our cue," Nightwing said as he flipped off the roof. Hood rolled his eyes, but didn't argue otherwise. Red Robin and Batman grappled after the other vigilantes. Red Hood kicked open the door, and the two thugs standing guard immediately dropped their guns and held their hands in the universal I surrender signal. When the other three thugs heard the commotion, they also quickly dropped their weapons and surrendered.
Well, damn, I was looking forward to more of a fight,
Hood said rather disappointedly. Take him, please, take him. I've learned more about outer space than I ever care to know. I didn't even know that the Drake Brat knew that much about space. But he just won't shut up. Vlad 2.0 begged the vigilantes. B, I got police about 10 minutes out, Oracle said in their ears. Batman grunted in confirmation. Red Robin made his way over to where Danny was tied, and then he hissed and stopped short. There, tied to the chair high as a kite, was someone who could easily pass as a younger version of him.
What the fuck, replacement?
Hood growled as he also spotted Danny tied to the chair. I'm not a replacement, I'm Danny, Danny giggled. Batman and Nightwing drew their breaths as they also saw what had gotten Red Robin's attention. Oracle, situation has changed. Need you to send the Batmobile. Stat. We've got a compromised meta, and we definitely don't need to be seen in the general public. Nightwing called over the comms. Got it. Batmobile ETA 7 minutes. GCPD will get there first, Oracle responded. Understood. Nightwing, stay with the thugs. Hood, Red Robin, you two take Danny out of here, Batman ordered. Hood and Red Robin worked to untie Danny. Danny squinted up at Hood, and his eyes flashed a toxic green. You smell funny, he giggled. What?
What?
Hood asked out loud. Danny let his head flop on Hood's shoulder, his eyes flashing between blue and green. Both Hood and Danny realized that trying to get Danny to walk under his own power wasn't going to work. Danny was a twink, so Hood just threw him over his shoulder and carried him out like a sack of potatoes. Danny giggled like a schoolgirl on a roller coaster. The three vigilantes and one antihero met on a neighboring rooftop where Danny was giggling softly to himself. Danny's eyes were unfocused and kept flashing between blue and the toxic green that set them all on edge. So Danny, why are you in Gotham? Nightwing was the first to speak. Came to find my family, but they're dead. The stars are so pretty, Danny replied as he tried to catch said stars. And who was your family? Nightwing asked gently. According to the birth certificate I found since I was adopted, Jack and Janet Drake. Red Robin went absolutely still. Before anyone else could ask questions, they heard the telltale roar of the Batmobile's engines. A nearby safe house was agreed to as the meeting point. They figured out how to lower the still completely high Danny to the ground and got him secured into the Batmobile. Now they just had to deal with the bomb that Danny had just dropped on their lives. End of chapter 1.